than to pretend to be something you're not. And then when you get into office, you can't do the things that you believe need to be done, that we want done as conservatives. We can't get it done because we've had to change ourselves so much to the point that we just can't continue. We can't vote. We can't do the things we want to do because we lied about who we are. I don't want to lie about who I am to win an election. Welcome, everybody, to another amazing episode of the Andrew Cooperrider Show. Of course, I'm your host, Andrew Cooperrider, your favorite commentary, your favorite a person running for office, of course. Andrew Cooperrider, run for state treasurer, coming at you with another amazing, wonderful episode talking all about these past election results. Before we dig into that, I want to say to our YouTube viewers, if you missed last week's episode, it's because YouTube didn't like it and decided they didn't want to show it to you. So you can go on, if you missed last week's episode, you can go on Facebook. You can see the video there. You can also see the video on Spotify. You can also listen to the audio-only version on Apple, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, all those places where podcasts are. So please check us out there. Also, as well, you guys can always text the word Liberty to 33777. That's right. Text the word Liberty to 33777 to join our alerts group. And as well, you can visit the old campaign at Andrew4ky.com. That's Andrew4ky.com. Please like, comment, share, subscribe. Just kind of spread the word, get it out there that we are doing these wonderful episodes, breaking down important things, talking about the news other people don't want to, with good commentary, while also letting people know, hey, this is the guy to vote for state treasurer in 23, because of course that's our next election. It's a very exciting time. So now, without further ado, we're going to dig into this. We're going to do this in a few different ways. First, we're going to talk about Kentucky elections. We're going to talk about Amendment 2, and then we're going to talk about some national feedback, right? So first, Kentucky elections. Wow, nationwide, maybe it wasn't quite as big of a red, quote-unquote, wave as the polls were projecting. In the state of Kentucky, we certainly had a red wave when you get outside of the liberal areas. When you get outside of Lexington or Louisville or some of those areas, you certainly saw a red wave. You saw some seats flipping in our state house, as far as that goes. Patty Minter down in Bowling Green, knocked off, replaced by a Republican. An election I said to be watching out for, the Emily Callaway versus Donahue election. Emily Callaway pulled that out, beating back Donahue. That was a big win there, big seat flip as far as that goes. Some other elections went pretty well. And also when you get into your very local elections, you're talking your fiscal court, your city councils, all those as far as it goes, what you saw was a red wave. You did. I mean, and sometimes people get really caught up in the federal side of things because they're looking at the federal elections. They're looking at the elections where, honestly, they're looking at the elections that involve quite a lot of urban areas, Lexington, Louisville, as I said, and not looking at some of our other elections out in rural areas like Kentucky, because for a long time, these rural county fiscal courts have been Democrat, a majority of Democrat, and they've switched over to Republican in a lot of these counties with this last election, and people are winning, and they're winning big. And we're going to talk about what that means to the national level too, as we dig down into it. But locally, at our county level, our state house level, we saw a lot of big elections there. And of course, Rand Paul reelected easily, not a surprise there. All of our Republican congressmen reelected easily, not a surprise there. Of course, in Louisville, you had some disappointing local results, and same with Lexington. But why is that? Why do we have some bad local results? Well, there's a few reasons. One is when you don't have a competitive top ticket race. See, elections are twofold, right? One, you got to turn out more of your base than the other side. Two, you got to convince the people in the middle to vote for you. That's pretty much the two things. And elections are one, but with time and money. Mostly, if they're going to be large elections like Congress and Senate, it's going to come down to a lot of money side of it. And that's how elections are won. And so when we talk about, like, take for example, Lexington, the top of the ticket race for the Lexington area was the Andy Barr race and, of course, the Rand Paul race, neither of which had a competitive race at all. Democrats didn't even support Jeff Young, who was running against Andy Barr for Congress. Therefore, Andy Barr didn't need to spend a lot of money getting out the vote for him personally, so he did it. And that then has a down ticket ramifications. People down ticket didn't quite coattail into some of the points and wins that they expected to do. Because here's something that we learn in Lexington, Louisville, and everything else, right? You will never get the Democrat base to vote for you. Okay. No matter how bad they are with the economy, no matter how bad they are with crime, no matter how bad they are with all of that, if you are conservative, they will never vote for you. You got to understand the media is going to do too. You put an R next to your name, you'll always be too extreme for them, right? Listening and going through, well, what's a moderate Republican? Or to the media, it doesn't exist. I mean, a lot of Republicans would call Mitt Romney very moderate. But during when he was running against Obama, if you remember, Biden said he's going to put you all back in chains. He was extreme and far right and wanted to subjugate women and minorities and blah, 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 blah. So it really doesn't matter how moderate you are. You're always going to be demonized if you put an R next to your name. So how do you win elections that way? Well, locally, of course, you like to see a better turnout with your base, but there wasn't much of a get out the vote effort. There was an effort, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't historically what you'd normally see out of the Andy Barr campaign, out of the Rand Paul campaign, just because it wasn't as competitive. Certainly they worked very hard. I'm not saying they didn't, not saying they didn't do rallies, not saying they didn't do reasonably what they could, but it wasn't like when you saw McGrath versus McConnell, where McConnell was putting in a lot of money and time into turning out the Republicans for himself as far as that goes and getting them to vote for him, of course. And it wasn't like, once again, McGrath versus Barr. You've seen that before. That is a lot more competitive, and there was a big turnout to vote races, right? And you saw some coattailing there. So, but locally, you did see a lot of Republicans winning. You see a lot of Democrats falling off, and that deals with too, as we talk about some of the national level issues, what we're to see. Now, the big thing here in Kentucky, of course, statewide, is that Amendment 2 failed, and you say, Amendment 2, right? Why did it fail? Well, it failed for, simply put, Amendment 2 stated that the right to an abortion is not enshrined in the Constitution. Why did it fail? It failed because, quite frankly, the pro-murder crowd puts way more money into their messaging than the pro-life crowd does. Why? Because there's no profit incentive on the pro-life crowd. You do not make money. The medical industry doesn't, well, I guess they make money off births and stuff, but there's a lot of special interest groups, Planned Parenthood as such, that make money off abortions. They just do. There's a lot of these social groups, and this is something to understand about the difference between Democrats and Republicans. The donors on the Democrat side of thing, there's a lot of big money donors that want to literally destroy our society, it seems like, and they're willing to put in a lot of money to do it. But on the Republican side, we don't have a whole lot of social issue donors, right? I mean, you would think that some of the church side of things, I guess, where they're used to kind of donating for conservative things and causes, they don't really come out the same way in politics, the same way that the Democrats do on their social issues, right? Part of that is because we already do acts of charity. To the Democrats, their act of charity is by giving money to their candidates to win government, to then take money from everybody else to give it to whoever they believes in need. That is their acts of charity. And so when it comes down to Amendment 2, I'm surprised it did as well as it did. And the fact that it did so well, despite the fact it was outspent over, I believe, over 10-1. They raised, I believe, about $400,000 or $500,000. The other side spent between $5 and $6 million just on TV ads and mail and texts and all these other things. I know for me, I barely got a pro-life message, and I got tons of the pro-abortion crowd's messages. And simply put, right, speech is free, but communication costs money. They did a better job of raising money and then spending it to lie to everybody about what it does. And I can tell you how I know this. I sent out an email, and I said, why did Amendment 2 fail? Well, it failed because people like us don't give our time or money, what it takes to win campaigns, to causes enough. We just don't. We don't do it. We don't do it at the same rate the left does. And people want to say, yeah, we do. No, you don't. Maybe you individually do. But the stats clearly show that that is not the case. It is not the case that the conservatives have an easier time raising money. It's harder for conservatives to raise money because, especially good, solid conservatives and the good, solid conservative issues, because it doesn't benefit the corporations if it is a solid conservative issue where you're not asking your government to do anything. The conservatives that raise a lot of money, we're talking, of course, about the more establishment Republicans, the so-called conservatives that raise a lot of money. Why do they do that? They're not getting donations. They're getting investments. People are investing in them and they want to pay off from our tax dollars. But when you have a truly good conservative, truly good liberty-minded things, when you have truly good liberty-minded ideals or truly good conservative ideals, there's no money in it for anybody as far as the corporations go. Because it's actually not about what government does for you. It's about what government isn't going to do for you. It's not, and it's a lot more. And the people don't recognize that. They don't look and see that I'm spending thousands upon thousands of dollars in taxes by investing in candidates that are actually going to do something to peel back and tear down, or those issues that are actually going to roll back the size. They're actually going to roll back spending. They're actually going to help us. I'm going to save money in the long run. They don't view it that way. Less than 3% of the electorate donates to causes, issues, or candidates. It's a lot higher on the Democrat side. It just is. And there's a lot more big money people put in because, of course, if you're the type that wants to destroy the world, you give money to the Democrats. And so in this case, on the abortion issue, they pulled in way more money. And it's crazy to think they only raised $500,000. When you look at how many people, to put this in perspective, right? 500,000. Okay. I find it hard to believe there's not 10,000 people out there that'd be willing to donate $10 to a pro-life cause. If you've got 10,000 people out there willing to donate $10, that's $100,000, right? $10. If you've got $100, that's $1 million. We didn't even do half that. Donated into it. And I know a lot of people don't like to hear that, right? It's kind of like the sermons at churches where you're told you got to tithe. You don't like hearing it. But at the end of the day, we have long since accepted. We know money runs our government. We know it. We know that it's who's giving money. People give money to the candidates, and that runs the government. We know that. We're just unwilling to spend our own money. Like I said, I know that's why Amendment 2 failed. They couldn't communicate the message. I send out my email saying, look, Amendment 2 failed because not enough people talked about or supported it. And I got responses back. Said, no, Amendment 2 failed because Republicans went too far by banning all exemptions and requiring abortion no matter what. Now providing exemption for the life of the mother and blah, 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 blah. That isn't what the amendment did. And I would respond to these people and say, well, they lied to you. Once again, this is my point. They lied to you. You believe that the amendment was a ban on abortion. It wasn't. In fact, if I would say back to him, I'd say if Democrats won the House and the state Senate and the state House, and they wanted to allow abortions up until birth, if Amendment 2 had passed, they'd still be allowed to do that. They'd still be allowed to do that. In fact, there's currently exemptions in Kentucky. There's exemption for in case of the life of the mother. And if an Amendment 2 passed, that exemption would still exist. Nothing would have happened to it. They lied to everybody. And we covered this extensively in the podcast. They just kept lying. But the problem is the pro-life side didn't have enough money to combat back. And so I send it out and people would respond and be like, no, it's because it went too far. And I'm like, you're proving my point. The fact that you believe the amendment did that is the problem. They said, well, you should have wrote some people responded, well, it should have been clear. It was pretty clear. There is no right to an abortion in the Constitution. That's pretty clear. And law dictates that you have to put the amendment that you're putting up for a vote. It has to be word for word how it's going to be wrote in the Constitution. So you can't add on commentary in the ballot measure. You're not allowed to. And what other way could you write it? They wrote it the best they could to be as clear as they could. Another person said, well, that's your fault for not telling us enough. Where were we supposed to get? Not we, I wasn't a part of the group, but where were they supposed to get the money to do it? You weren't giving it. Nobody was. Well, people were. Once again, if you're one of those people who were, thank you for donating to that cause. But that's my point. It was a communication battle. And once again, conservatives lost because this wasn't an issue that the normal conservative donor group puts in. Because once again, the normal conservative donor group, if you look at who's flowing money into people like the McConnells and the other people in the very high dollar donor campaigns, it's generally people who want something from the government. Nobody who wants anything from the government was putting money into this issue. So it failed. It failed. Because because the voters' vote is bought off. It's funny, we were shooting ads the other day, and I was talking to the guy who was shooting the ad. We were shooting like a 30-second ad. And I turned to him and I said, it is a shame that this works. It is a shame that a 30-second ad works to win over a voter. Our system shouldn't work this way. But it does. Because people are unwilling to do their research. We can complain about it all day. We all know I do. We all know I complain about, wow, the voters really get the wool pulled over their eyes. Voters are able to be lied to, and they don't catch it, and they don't do their research and everything else. Of course, not you guys, talking about the voters as a whole. They're lied to a lot, and they don't catch it. They're busy. It's very hard to stay informed. But they're most likely not even going to do a cursory Google search on who they vote for. They're most likely not going to try to listen from both sides on an issue. They're going to watch an ad, get a piece of mail, and that's how they're going to vote. It's unfortunate that is the case, but that's how it goes. And we do the best we can to campaign the best we can with those limitations. But once again, that takes time and money to communicate these ideas. And you got to bring it in. And if you feel heavy on you right now that you're like, hey, I do need to get involved more with my dollars. You can always donate to my campaign. Shameless plug. C4ky.com. Letter C, the number 4, ky.com. C4ky.com. But my point is simply this. That the voters aren't going to research. So we have to communicate as best we can in 30-second clips, in a mailer, in a TV ad, in these things, and communicate the message the best we can. And we can't do that when it's not an issue that benefits the corporations because there's no money in it. Democrats, on the other hand, they have tons of money in it. Almost every single one of their issues benefits the giant corporations. And even if it doesn't, they're willing to put money into social issues because they understand it turns out people, right? If you're a Republican donor and you like to donate on because you like the government doing things for you and you like the Republicans in power because they do more of it for you, whatever it may be. Let's say you're an oil and gas company. And right now, if you're an oil and gas company, let's quite be honest, you want Republicans in power. Now, if you're just an energy company, you probably actually don't. Funny enough, you give money to the Democrats because they provide large subsidies for this green energy. So if that's where you believe the market's going, you don't want to pay for it yourself as a company. You might as well get the tax dollars to do it for you. But let's say you're not one of those. It'd be a good idea for you to donate into social issues because that's where conservatives are right now winning. And transitioning to the national look. Is people are talking about what happened to our national wave. I can tell you what happened. You messaged on the wrong things. Anybody who spends a small amount of time talking to people who switch from Democrat to Republican, you would know why. Talk to them and ask them why are they switching, and that's how you know you're going to win over the moderate Democrats and the independents, and the moderate Republicans are still going to vote for Republican. Those are the issues, and those issues are not the economy, as shocking as it sounds. For a few reasons. One, Democrats have always been bad at the economy. They've always been there. Two, did the Republicans clearly articulate what they were going to do to change the economy? No, they did not. Now, I knew what they could do, and it was kind of complicated. It has to do with the fact of budget bills and reconciliation. So if you had the majority of control in the Senate, you could pass reconciliation bills that then you could put in riders into it to say you can't spend money on X or you have to do X to in order to free up things like energy and different fiscal policies that stops us from printing money that causes the inflation, right? I knew those things. Confirmation of individuals, like people going into the treasury and things like that, in order to make sure you're having people who are not going to advocate for the outright printing of money. Those are all things they could do, they could have done. But do you know that? Did they ever articulate that? No. Instead, they say, well, it's, what caused inflation? A bunch of people talked about it and printing money. Great. The thing is, and I think the voter is smart enough to know this, almost everybody is. You do it too, Republicans. You print money too. You voted for the infrastructure bill where we had to print money too. A lot of them did. I know several in Kentucky didn't, but a lot of them did. And that prints money and you vote for it too. So how are you going to say, well, you try to articulate inflation because bad fiscal part and they're just spending money we don't have, but then Republicans do it as well. Do Republicans shrink the budget? No. They never have. So nobody was buying that. So you needed to clearly articulate what you are going to do differently to give people confidence. And here's the other thing. So a lot of people want to talk about, well, candidate quality matters. What do you mean by candidate quality? Mean what? That they were too extreme? But yet you want to say that with a straight face while Democrats are able to run people who can't speak, people who are very far left and get away with it and win constantly, people that we would say are very, very extreme to the left. And they get away with it constantly. But to the right, you can't run people who are too extreme. Don't get me wrong. What do you mean by extreme, right? If you're talking about people who talk about voter integrity issues, I think there's a proper way to message on that. And for people who want to say, what do you mean by proper way to message on it? You do need to talk about the issue because it's real and it's there and it's something we have to fix. But at the same time, you can't hit on it too much because, well, why would anybody turn out and vote for you if they think the election's already rigged? Now, I think it's an uphill battle for Republicans every time because they got to overcome a lot of issues that quote unquote rig elections. I think that's for a different episode because that's a deep dive. And I think we have a lot of voting issues that need to be addressed. I mean, look at what's going on in some of the Maricopa County had tons of issues, right? And I certainly think if a position's powerful enough, there can definitely be shenanigans, like a presidential, a governor's race, a senator's race that's important. I definitely think there can be shenanigans. Is that what you mean by extreme? People talking about that? I don't think that's too extreme. You got a message on it, right? So people turn out to vote for you. But I don't think it's extreme. What is the extreme? That's the thing that bad candidate quality. What is bad about it? I can tell you what I thought was bad about Oz. The thing that's bad about Oz was he was a Democrat for a very, very long time. He barely lived in Pennsylvania. And up until a few years ago, he was all for all these social LGBTQ, gay, straight, transgender, whatever you want to call it, social issues that, once again, not that there's something I necessarily want my government to do over the fact that you're gay, straight, or transgender, but I'm talking about this pushing of these ideas. He was all for it. And I think that's what's key. Because when we look at Youngkin, when you look at DeSantis, when you look at these governors who have won in purple or blue areas, when you look at candidates who win in purple or blue areas, if you bother to actually talk to people who are leaving the Democrat Party and coming to Republicans, it's for a simple reason. They're winning and they're switching for the same reasons. It's not because Democrats are bad on the economy. It's not because they're paying $3, $4 a gallon for gas. It's because Democrats want to chop the genitalia off minors. That's the reason why people are leaving them. It's because they want to look you straight in the face and say it's fair that a fully developed person who lived as a man his entire life and now suddenly with no other classifications decides I'm now a woman, it's fair for them to compete in women's sports. They want to tell you that. They want to tell you that teaching kids, people are running from them. People are going crazy. And you know this because if you look at the school board elections, they went very right. There was a red wave in our school boards all across this nation. It's because people don't want you teaching the kids that they're all racist with these CRT ideas that tell them they're racist or tell them if they're born with a skin color, they're automatically beneath or above a certain group. That's what CRT teaches. And people are coming at that very hard. It's not the economy. Talk to the rural Kentuckians. These rural areas are going from blue to red. The number one reason is because of social issues. Talk to the Hispanic vote. They're not leaving Democrats over the economy. They're leaving Democrats because they are socially conservative and the Democrats have lost their ever flipping mind on the issue. That's what's going on. And I don't think the quote unquote, whatever you want to call it, the establishment Republicans, whatever the mainstream Republicans, they haven't caught on to that. They don't want to talk about those issues. Ronna McDaniel at the federal chair for the Republican Party, the national chair for the Republican Party, she was hiring LGBTQ consultants to tell them how to message better to LGBTQ people so they could win over more of their vote. Democrats messaging to those people is what's costing them voters. You should be doing the opposite. But they're like, well, we need to be more moderate on this issue and we can attract in voters. No! That isn't what's causing voters to leave the Democrat Party. They're leaving it because of these issues. Don't become moderate on it. Stay true to your conservative beliefs. And it's wonderful. You don't have to pretend to be something you're not to win over voters. You can stand strong and be a conservative and win. Because once again, they're never, the base Ds are never going to vote for Republican. They believe they're racist. They believe they're bigoted, whatever. No matter what just because there's an R next to their name, they're never going to vote for you. Stop trying to attract them in. Ask your moderate Democrats, ask your moderate Republicans, ask your middle. Why is it you don't like the Democrat Party? What's causing you when you vote for a Republican? Why? That's the reason why. It's social issues. Look at who won big. They won on social issues. And yet these more establishment Republicans and consultants are afraid to touch the issue. They say, well, the biggest issue for people is inflation. That's what we need to message on. Yeah, that's what people are going to tell you is most worrying them day to day. And that's the party overall. But you want to talk about individual candidates? Because that's what happens, right? They're not talking about a party. They're talking about individual candidates. Why do you vote for or against somebody? I'm telling you right now, it's these social issues. And people don't want to. And when you look at Pennsylvania, you can either have the liberal who's very liberal and true, or the liberal who's now running with an R next to their name. Because that's what Oz was for his entire life, pretty much. When I first found out Oz was running as Republican, I was shocked. I was like, that guy, I'm pretty sure he was liberal his entire life. They don't want Democrat light. That's not what we want. It doesn't encourage us to show up to vote for Democrat light. We want conservatives who will stand strong on the issues. That's what the middle of the road voters too. And I'm worried that people are going to take away the wrong message. That they're like, well, we just need to be more Democrat. We need to stop messaging on social issues like abortion or other things because, well, that's a losing issue for us. What are you talking about? State house races. Look at this. Okay, so you say abortion's a bad issue to vote on. Okay, follow me here. The Amendment 2 fails. But we win more seats for Republicans in our state legislature. Who's in charge of setting abortion law? Our state legislatures are. So the body in charge of abortion laws gets even redder, gets more conservative. At the same time, this amendment fails because it wasn't messaged properly. But people are going to look at that and say, we need to run away from the abortion issue. No. Stay strong on your conservative issues. But more importantly, don't let the Democrat messaging, learn your messaging lessons. Don't let a Democrat paint you as extreme because you believe that a child deserves to live. Paint them as extreme for wanting to. It's easy. When a Democrat says to you, Republicans, when people say to you, are you willing to make exemption for the life of the mother, rape, and incest? Respond and say, is that the only line you're looking at? Is that what my Democrat opponent is saying they're willing to draw the line at? Instead of asking me where exemptions I have on my pro-life message, let's ask them what exemptions they have on their message. Where do they draw the line? What is it based upon? Because these lefties, they don't have a good answer to it. They're more extreme on abortion than we are. Instead of being afraid to touch the issue, learn your lesson. And point them out as the extremists they are on the issue. Point them out as the extremists they are on all these social issues. Learn your lesson. But instead, the takeaway will be, well, we need better candidates that appeal more to the moderate voters by them being more moderate. Let's work on making them all be things they're not. Because after all, what is the point of winning elections if you then can't govern on your principles and your values? Wouldn't you rather lose standing up and saying what you really believe in than to pretend to be something you're not? And then when you get into office, you can't do the things that you believe need to be done, that we want done as conservatives. We can't get it done because we've had to change ourselves so much to the point that we just can't continue. We can't vote. We can't do the things we want to do because we've lied about who we are. I don't want to lie about who I am to win an election. That's not what I want to do. Why would other Republicans want to do that as well? Message on what you believe in. Message on the points that make sense. Message with consistency and don't lie about who you are. That's not how you want to win elections. You don't want to lose yourself in the victory. But be straightforward. But learn how to handle the situation when somebody else is talking back at you. We have got to learn how to message, but then we also need our supporters, our voters, the people who believe the same things we do. I hate to say it. We have got to learn to crack open the wallets the same way the Democrats do. Because they'll crack open the wallets to kill kids in a heartbeat. They'll crack open the wallets to chop the genitalia off minors in a heartbeat. They'll crack open their wallets to teach your kids they're all racist in a heartbeat. Yet you're not willing to do the same to defend yourself. It's a form of self-defense, really, by supporting the candidates, the policies, and the people you need to get into office to protect your values. And I hope that's the lesson we all learn. We need to do a better job of informing others, telling other people how to vote, and also donating to candidates so they can help message to get it out there. We have the winning message. The problem is we can't get money to get it out there. Even at the federal level, the senators in all these other states, right? In order to finally get money into their campaigns, they had to kowtow. They had to become more moderate in their messaging. They couldn't talk about what they wanted to talk about anymore because they couldn't get in the money. The things that won them the primaries, they couldn't talk about anymore because the people who were holding the purse strings that they needed to communicate demanded it from them. In our campaign, we haven't taken money from a corporate or necessarily special interest PAC. When I was running for the state senate, I took money from the Massey PAC and I took money from Pro-Life PAC. So I took money from Thomas Massey's PAC because I align with him. I took money from Pro-Life PAC because I align with what their values were. We didn't attempt to or accept money from any other PAC, and nor will we do that in a treasurer's race. We're very careful about who, quote unquote, owns us. We know that whoever pays the piper controls the tune, so we don't want them. We don't want their money. And if we want to elect people that are going to stand strong for our values, we have got to support them. Because if we don't, the people who stand against us, they will get the support they need to take everything from us. Well, guys, that's what we have time for today. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for listening to what I had to say today. Please share the message. Let others know what we got going on. I look forward to continuing to communicate to you over this next 2023 election and into also as well the upcoming legislative session. We got some big bills we're working on there. Of course, our bill to fight back against these drag shows with minors, and as such, that's happening here in Kentucky. I'll give you guys some updates on that as we go. I'll see you guys next week. Thank you so much for joining us. Once again, make sure you share this with others. Have a great and wonderful day.